Hello and welcome to the top 30 of our James Bond villains countdown. We have reached number 30, so let's get straight into it. And we have Fiona Volpe from Thunderball, the ginger-haired femme fatale who's kind of a go-between Lago and Blowfelt, I think. She's certainly on a level with Lago. She's not under him. And throughout this movie, she's very tough. She takes out villains who have been underperforming. She beds certain characters to try and lure them into a false sense of security that doesn't quite work with Bond. I don't quite understand the speech she gives Bond towards the end of her sort of role in the movie, but her death scene's certainly very good. That whole chase through the junk canoe is probably one of the best scenes in Thunderball. So number 30 is Fiona. Number 29, we have Dario from License to Kill. He just wanted to give Felix's wife a nice honeymoon. Sorry, I couldn't resist. This guy has one of the best deaths in the whole series when he falls into this weird cocaine crusher type thing. He's a very competent villain, though. He identifies Bond at the drug factory, and I can't let this pass without mentioning the fact that Benicio del Toro, who plays Dario, this was probably one of his earliest roles, and since then he'd gone on to have an absolutely fantastic career over the last 30 years. But Dario is at 29. 28, we have a villain who you probably didn't expect to be this high. It is Apostas. Do you even recognise him or know who he is? He's sort of in the background in a few scenes in For Your Eyes Only, but one scene you probably remember him from is when he has a fight with Roger Moore's Bond on the side of the mountain at the end. Bond is frantically trying to climb up and get to him before Apostas can kind of remove all the mounting clips and send Bond hurtling to his death. The director in this scene really pushes things completely to the wire. I mean, the last clip looks like it looks impossible that it can actually still be attached to the mountain. It's really touch and go, very exciting, lots of tension, and for this scene alone, Apostas gets a really, really high placing. 27, we have Miss Tarot, one of the early Bond villains from Dr. No. She's not particularly evil. I'm guessing she's maybe one of Dr. No's old girlfriends or a hostess of some kind who she's kind of stayed with out of fear. She does have this amazing scene with Bond where he knows she's a villain and he's constantly trying to trip her up verbally, and she keeps sort of almost putting her foot in it but not quite, and it goes back and forth for kind of a while, and ultimately he gets her arrested. But I just really enjoy the kind of verbal sparring in that scene. 26, we have Drax, one of the great Bond villains everyone remembers. The script and the dialogue for Drax is just absolutely astonishing. I would quote him if I could remember some of the really complex things that he said. I did try and remember at least one of his lines, which is something like, you appear with the tedious inevitability of a much-loved season, or something like that. I can't do a Drax voice at all, but he's just so dry and slow in everything he says. And he's got this habit of trying to find daft ways to kill Bond instead of just killing him. So, you know, he has some old guy try and shoot him out of a tree with a shotgun. Chang puts him in this like spinning machine thing that I mentioned earlier on in one of the segments. He gets him in a python pool. He puts him under the afterburner things of the rocket ship that's just about to set off. He just comes up with all these weird things that just don't work. In fact, he even says it. He says something like, "You keep defying my attempts to plan an amusing death for you," or something like that. He's just a classic Bond villain, and definitely worthy of a place at 26. 25, we have Blowfelt, who I think is the highest ranked Blowfelt. I think he's won this sort of mini series of Blowfelts. And I think the reason he wins it is just, I like the kind of physicality of Telly Savalas's Blowfelt. This film climaxes with a brilliant sequence on the bobsled where him and Bond are just going toe to toe, and it looks like Bond gets him a really good death scene, but then he comes back. So this is the Blowfelt who basically wins. He's almost like Lex Luthor in this film, I think, the way Telly Savalas sort of plays him, but definitely very, very good. 24, we have Helga Brandt, and when it comes to the sort of ginger-haired female villains of this little era, the other one being Fiona Volpe that I'm thinking of, I think Helga's my favourite just by a little bit. I think she just has a more interesting character. She's really confident and assured when she's with Asato and Bond, but when she's with Blofeld or in his presence, she's just like a scared little girl who just wants to be anywhere but there. So she's like a character who sort of embraced her position as a villainess, but at the same time, every now and again, her sort of old, more human character comes out. I think if I'd have written this film, I probably would have had Asato die in the piranha pool and not Helga. And I would have developed Helga more and maybe had her being the one shot by Blowfelt near the end. Or maybe even becoming the Bond girl instead of just bringing that second Asian girl in who was barely any different from the first one. So, at number 23, we have Lago, a classic early Bond villain who's just got it all. He's got the eye patch, he's got the shark pool, he's got this beautiful woman who he doesn't seem to have any interest himself, but he's just conveniently there so Bond can come and try and steal her. He's ferociously devoted to his task on behalf of his master, Blowfelt. And he's not just the brains behind the brawn, he's very physical. He beats Bond at the end in the fight. It's only Domino who saves Bond with a harpoon gun. And he's a fantastic swimmer. He's in the aquatic scenes. He's really great. He's got this distinctive white hair. You can always tell him apart from the other swimmers. And he always seems to be like the best one. And he's very competent, Lago. He's a very difficult man to fool. You know, he's ruthlessly efficient when he kills Angelo. And then there's that scene where Bond is sort of trying to blend in as one of the frogmen. And it's Lago who spots Bond. You know, Lago, who's got the presence of mind to actually see through that visor and recognise that it's Bond. So, on the whole, just a really, really great villain. Number 22, we have Kananga, played by Yaphet Kotto, a brilliant actor who I wish I'd seen in more films, actually. I've seen him in The Running Man. He's brilliant in Alien, and in Live and Let Die, he just plays this amazing villain. He's got two scenes that really stand out. One is when he's sort of interrogating Bond about his dealings with Solitaire. And at the same time, this is the same scene where he pulls his face off, like you can see in this picture, and reveals that he's not just Kananga, he's also Mr. Big. And it's a small little detail, but at the end of the film, when he fights Bond just by the side of the shark pool, I love the little facial expressions he pulls when he's smiling and he's doing his little thing with the knife. It's just pure Yaphet Kotto coming into the character. But on the whole, I think Kananga's just a really, really charismatic villain, a brilliant for Live and Let Die. So finally today we have Naomi, one of the very best female villains in the series. And a lot of that is down to the fact that she really pulls a 180 in the middle of the movie. We think she's just a kind of attractive woman working for Stromberg, a fairly nondescript hostess, helicopter pilot sort of thing. And then out of nowhere, it turns out she's this assassin who fires guns out of these, presumably the same helicopter she flies Stromberg around in. And she's just really, really vicious. She sort of, waves to Bond just before she's about to try and shoot him to death. Her death is actually interesting because Bond actually gets away, and then he decides to He decides to mess around with this missile system, set it up and take her out of the sky. And the normal thing at this point in a Bond film would be that he would escape and the helicopter goes on its merry way and maybe they meet again later in the film and then kills them. But he decides to take her out when she's when the fight's over. It's almost like not really in Bond's character when he does that. It's a strange one, but I guess in the heat of the moment, she's been trying to kill him and I don't know, he just decides it might be more... Unless he thinks that the helicopter's still going to be floating around when he comes out of the water and it's just a tactical decision. But who knows? So that's the end of today's episode. We've gone from 30 to 21. We've knocked off another 10. We've got 20 left. So stay tuned for next time when we go into the top 20. See you next time.